This is episode 52 of our Road to Unicum for World of Tanks. Hi, I'm Togrim, and today we review the LTTB. This is a Tier 8 Russian light tank, and we're going to look at a Tier 10 airfield battle. I've been trying to feature light tanks as bottom tier to give you an idea of handle situations like this, and you've really basically got to pick your spots very carefully and be patient. So from the eastern spawn, the best position to go to, in my opinion, is the E7 shelf. It has the trifecta of a good field of view, hard cover, and adjacent soft cover. So you can play vision games and pull back under hard cover after you fired. Now I had the fortune of being in the northeastern area of the spawn, so I'm closest to this little fishhook area at E7, but even if I had spawned southeast of our flag, I would still make the run up this hill. It's definitely a little bit risky, and you really shouldn't stop to fire. As it turned out, it looks like an M41 on the opposing team also had the nearby spawn. I knocked down those trees because felled trees do act to increase concealment. You can think of them as bushes. And then I waited a good 10 seconds just hiding out behind that rock until I was going to drop from that M41 spotting. And you can either, guess when you're going to stop being spotted by simply looking at the clock and, counting off 10 seconds, or another really easy way to do it is when the tank that you spotted is no longer lit, you can safely assume that the same is true for you. The great thing about this position is it allows me to see their tanks that are crossing south along the F lane to South Hill, and if there are tanks on the South Hill, I'll often get flanking shots. And that's important, as a tank that has 170 millimeters of silver penetration, you want to get as many flanking and rear shots as possible. The other nice thing about being on the shelf, since I am concealed behind these bushes, is it allows me to manage and deal with the very poor max gun depression of only -5 degrees, and that's pretty common for Soviet tanks. You get used to it after a while, but nonetheless, that's why, for example, I don't go on the South Hill. If I'm on the South Hill, that's very ridgy, and in order to fire on a tank, I need to come up and over it a lot, right? Or I need to come over it and then shoot sideways, but that's a good way to minimize, having poor gun depression, but it also leaves your drive wheel on the side of your tank exposed. Notice at 907, he spotted it to fire and then he backed out because he's waiting to see if I'm going to peek, and there's no way I'm going to do it because I'm not going to trade a 320 alpha shot for my 180 pea shooter, right? Like 180 alpha is fairly like average range for Tier 8 light tanks, but for the most part you've got to kind of work your gun in over time and be patient. There are a couple heavy tanks that are right across the way that VK, and then two VKs, the 1001P and then the 4502, but this 4190, this M41, is making too early of a rush, and because I knew he was coming before he even spotted me, I was able to kind of go up and over the ridge to be able to aim down and land a shot. And we talked about this back in episode 41. He is essentially suicide scouting too early. There are too many tanks that are live. He doesn't have a safe exit where he went. It's a very not smart thing to do. Yeah, I gotta help this M46 Patton, and I'm getting some flanking shots here, which is great. This is very safe for me, and then thankfully this VK is giving me a side hull armor, and so that's an easy kill shot. So as I've talked about in other videos, one thing you can do is shoot down onto the top of tanks, so onto the top of their engine deck or the top of their frontal hull, or especially on the roof of their turret, because tanks are designed to be blocking shots against opponents that are of the same elevation. So here against this VK, I can see the top of his turret roof, and so that's a fairly easy penetration. So the LTTB has a few characteristics that are unusual. The first is that the mobility or turning of it is so good that you'll often fishtail if you're not careful. So it has really good agility and mobility, and that's surprising given that the FAK actually has meaningful hull and turret armor for a light tank. Right, so the upper front hull is in the range of about 150 millimeters of effective armor, and then the turret, it varies between like 90 up to well over 150. So you will bounce some shots from Tier 6 and 7 tanks off of your upper hull and your turret face, but of course you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're hoping that the armor is going to bail you out. That's one of the most common mistakes of light tank players, either hoping that a tank that has some protection that the armor will bail you out, or relying on the mobility. Okay, now look at the score, 10-5, and look at the mini-map. And so our heavy tanks on the North Hill, Thankfully, most of them properly deployed there, which is really good, and they want it big, but they're going to make a really big mistake here. What they should be doing is advancing along the D and E lanes, because there's plenty of rocks that they can use to get close to those tank destroyers, but instead they're going to feed those tank destroyers one at a time by going up the C lane where there's a lot of open ground, and they're going to be conceding the first shot advantage. Now, obviously, you know, I'm more concerned about this 907. This is an incredibly, well, this is an overpowered tank, to put it mildly, because the frontal hull armor is so good, and it's got your typical, you know, Soviet medium tank mobility, as well as really good DPM. So I had to come over and help the Grilla. Now, one thing that was really unfortunate in that whole exchange is when I put the 907 on auto aim, he correctly went it on the far side of the Grilla, and so my auto aim shot hit the Grilla and put him into one-shot territory. So there's the possibility that had I not done that, the Grilla may have survived that encounter, and so that's why I'm apologizing in chat. You know, that was a big mistake on my part, and you know, obviously, you know, it's going to make this a lot harder to carry. You know, moving on. The last couple shots that I've made, I've been trying to hit the drive wheel of the Luva, and since I know he's coming down, I'm going to try to hit the rear of his engine deck. The shot was just a little bit late, but I got to come down here quickly and help. Like, our heavy tanks on North Hill have just been obliterated, which is really kind of very frustrating, but there's nothing that I can do about it. What I can do is make sure that I try to keep this VK friendly tank alive, and then what I do is I move up here to rear hug the Luva. So the Luva has got superb max gun depression at -10 degrees, but on the rear of the tank it's only -5 degrees. And so my thought process was twofold. Either one, I'm going to be tall enough that the Luva can depress his gun enough to shoot me in the turret, but that's preferable for him to hit me than to kill the one-shottable VK, or he's not going to be able to shoot me, in which case I'm going to be able to safely put enough shells into him until he's dead. Now, it is a 3 versus 3 now. The unfortunate thing is they've got a tier 10 and 9 with very punishing alpha, right? You know, and they can theoretically one-shot me, even though I have most of my health, and they can certainly one-shot the 2 heavy tanks that are with me. And so I'm telling them in chat, we got to be patient. You know, I will spot, but what we don't want is for the heavy tanks to expose themselves and get out-visioned by tank destroyers, because, you know, in a lot of cases, you know, they're going to sit behind a bush. You know, they have binocs and or camo net, so they're going to get the first spot advantage and therefore the first shot advantage. So notice as I'm pulling away here, I'm moving in a vector directly away from the Waffenträger that I just shot, right? And I'm trying to keep hard cover and soft cover and ridges in between us, so that even in the unlikely event that he does spot me, they're not going to have much of a shot, or it's going to take an extremely skilled or lucky shot to hit me. Okay, so what I want to do is get a sense of where the Grilla and the T-28 prod is. What I don't want to do is give away my approach, so I'm not going to step foot in the cap yet. There will be a time later in the battle where I'm going to try capping, but right now it's too early. And the big thing that I got to be worried about is, have they pushed far enough down the 1 lane that they might be in this area in front of me? So down around like G1, H1, J1, I need to make sure that they're not behind us, and then as I come up to this bush, I'm going to make sure to stay behind it so I can spot directly north along the 1 lane. So we know now with pretty good confidence that they're definitely in the northern half of the map, and they're probably in a 3x3 grid between C1 over toward E4. Now, it's not a surety, right? The Grilla hasn't been spotted for a while, so he may have moved, but at least for now, that's what I'm working off of. So I'm going to move up behind this hard cover, and there's a bush at the end of this rock line. As I come up here, the Waffenträger and I end up proxy spotting each other. Right, so, and I make a very big mistake. Right here, I should have been further toward my right along that ridge, but I'm going in a straight line away from D2. And as a result, I eat a high explosive shell from the T-28 prod. And to make matters worse, I thought maybe I could out-repair without having to burn my repair kit. And so I eat another shell. So now, but previously, I could have survived one shot from their Grilla. Now I'm one-shottable by either the Grilla or the T-28 prod. And so I have mismanaged my health very badly, and as a result, I'm going to have to play as if I'm one-shottable the rest of the way. And then, to make matters worse, I also had to burn my repair kit, because I was like, I don't want to stay here anymore. This is really bad, you know. I did manage to get one shot in the T-28 prod, and I go ahead and take a very low percentage shot toward his turret cheeks. You know, it is theoretically possible, you know, with the 170 penetration, if I got a high enough roll, maybe I'll penetrate the turret cheeks. Certainly just worth taking, since, you know, a tank like this has got plenty of ammo to work with, and I'm unlikely to run out, you know, and have that dictate the match. Okay, so we know where the T-28 prod is. We know he's over 600 hit points. Still don't know where the Grilla is. And I could step foot into cap. We could try capping. The only issue about that is if we try capping and they come over to us, right, they're going to be able to outbrawl us. Tiger and I would both die from one shots. And the T-28 Prot actually has meaningful armor. So instead of trying to cap, we've got over 5 minutes left on the clock, and we have me here in a very, very mobile tank with good vision control. So what I'm going to do is work my way up, and what I want to try to isolate is whether or not the Guerrilla has left the northwest corner of the map. If it turns out that he's most likely still in the northwest corner of the map, then I'm going to go ahead and go back and cap. But there's no need for me to rush yet. And again, I'm taking a very wide loop here, right? Keeping an eye on where the white circle is. That's the max spotting range of 445 meters. And so I'm going to work my way very carefully and patiently. And so now that I've got this ridge and these rocks in front of me, now I can kind of cut directly in a vector west, along the B lane. And so I'm going to poke my head out just very briefly here to see if, is there Guerrilla somewhere in these bushes, along the 3-4 lanes. And so, the answer is no. And even, is he maybe sitting up on C2 or the T-28 Prot? So my Sixth Sense hasn't gone off, and I'm just barely showing a sliver of my turret just in case they did spot me. Right, but Sixth Sense is not going off, and I go ahead and take a blind shot here toward the Guerrilla's last position, and again, trying to see whether or not my Sixth Sense goes off. So the Guerrilla most likely didn't go past us toward our beach, toward our 9-0, toward our base, toward the 9-0 lane, so I can now safely deduce that both of their tank destroyers are still in the northwest corner of the map. And the reason why I'm explaining all of this is I think in light and medium tanks, you really need to be methodical, especially about light tanks. A lot of times people kind of drive like a chicken with their head cut off, and they don't have an intentional plan of what they're trying to do, and they're just relying on their speed to protect them, which is a terrible idea. Like, you use your speed in light tanks to flank known targets and to flex around the map. You don't use it to try to avoid getting hit. Like, if you're in that situation, somehow you've messed up or an enemy surprised you weren't expecting. Now, I was spotted as I crossed that E4 gap, and so I hung behind the rocks long enough that I would become unlit. And so now I'm going to go ahead and step into the cap because we've still got plenty of time. 3 minutes left. It's only going to take me 100 seconds to cap. And thankfully, both of our heavy tanks heeded what I said earlier, which let's be patient. We've got me to spot, and the good thing is both of them are next to hard cover, so they can pull out and take a shot and pull back during their reload, so they're safe. And for whatever reason, I don't know why I actually went to the north side of the cap. There's no reason for me to do that. There's actually some open ground where I could get shot, and so I think better of it and then come into this corner here. So now I'm tucked in toward the south part of the cap, and not only that, I'm sitting behind multiple buildings, so it's physically impossible for them to see me unless they proxy spot me, and it's physically impossible for them to shoot me. There are, you can shoot targets through I think one wall, but through a building like this, the shell's not going to pass through even for a high caliber shell, or at least I've never seen it happen that way. And since I'm in the cap, this is going to apply some pressure for them to come out of the cap. So now we spotted the Guerrilla. He's in the open ground. He actually chose a very poor approach line. If I were in his shoes, I probably would have tried running down the 1 lane and getting close, but since he's gone out into the open, our VK tags him, and then our Tiger II is going to finish him off. Really nice work, and then once the heavies do that, this match should pretty much be done. The thing that I'm going to be watching for is looking at the building. So you can see some dust kicking up there right over where the flag is, and so, because there's a lot of destructible hardcover there you go. Buildings being knocked down. I know that T-28 Prot is driving towards me, and just doing the quick math, he's actually going to be able to reach me before time expires, so this match is unlikely to be... It's possible that he'll reset me, so I just go ahead and drive around, and it's really hard, to kind of shoot through buildings, especially in a tank like the T-28 Prot, which has a glacial turret, in terms of its turret traverse. So I just go around him and then we finish him off. Even if I had died there, one of our heavies probably would have gotten the kill shot on him. So we finished with the Ace Tanker Mastery Badge. The LTTB is a very fun tank to play. It's really popular. I've actually found that I enjoy much more the T-54 Lightweight, which is a gem of a tank at Tier 9, so I'll be talking about that in an upcoming video. And I also just unlocked the T100 LT, which I'm very excited to play. I want to thank those of you who have suggested that I get signed up for Patreon, so I just got signed up. You can find me on patreon.com/Togrim. If you guys are inclined and have the wherewithal to support me financially, it's certainly really appreciated. And if you aren't, I appreciate your spreading the word and continuing to give me feedback about these videos. And I want to thank you guys. You guys have been an awesome community for me. I've had my channel up for over 10 years now, covering a whole bunch of different MMOs, and then, most recently spending a lot of time with World of Tanks because I find it to be such a high skill cap game. Let me know your questions and feedback, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.